Thomson wins it in overtime.
Brady can drop, breakaway shoots, scores!
All right, everyone, we are joined with Bruce Garrioch. Bruce, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you on.
Good morning. How are you?
Not doing too bad. It's a little cold outside, so it's nice to be inside, a little warm. How's your break been so far?
It's been good. Got a chance to go up to the lake, and I got a couple of days at home there to get some housekeeping done at home, and then back at it Thursday. So it's going to be a busy run in those final 32 games to the finish line.
Oh, absolutely. We got a lot to talk about, especially with the Ottawa Senators, but I want to talk about the Belleville Senators first. Over the last week, we had some shocking news. Head coach Troy Mann was fired suddenly. Claire Hanna of TSN reported that he was fired for handing pre-scouting material to other NHL teams, or one other NHL team, pardon me. What do you know about that situation, and why did that happen?
Well, I think there were a few things that were happening. I think number one, that the communication between Ottawa and Belleville was at a point where to call it non-existent wouldn't be fair. But I don't think there was much communication between the head coach of the Belleville Senators and the head coach of the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can have that situation in your organization when you're trying to have success. I think the other thing you have to look at is I'm not convinced that they were entirely pleased with the development of the prospects down there. And as for anything else, I don't know.
Yeah, so on the second point there, what do you mean? Like, I mean, we have Batherson, we have Norris, we have some good prospects. What have you heard specifically about that? Because that's a little shocking to me. Our prospects have developed well, and Troy Mann's repertoire, we'll call it, around the AHL has been that he's been a good developer. He was with Hershey. He did well there as well, had a good record. And even with an injured Belleville team, had a plus, like a over 500 rating in the standings. So I'm curious to what specific players, if you know, they didn't like, and if that, is actually the reason. It's, in my opinion, it just sounds like there's a bunch of different reasons being thrown out there. And I'm just looking for.
Yeah, and I think the problem is everybody's digging for reasons, and I don't think anybody really knows the reasons. I think that you asked me the question, I gave an answer. That's my answer. I don't know beyond that. I mean, I've listened to a lot of people throwing all kinds of theories at the wall, and I think some of them are absolute hocus pocus, or let's just put it this way, they're not true at all. And I heard somebody mention that Trent Mann got told in a parking lot. Well, that's just not true. You can't involve Trent Mann in this decision. It's his brother.
Mm-hmm.
And this was going to, the one thing I think that both Manns realized when they got into the situation, Brandon, was at some point or another, this was going to happen. The coach was going to get fired, because that's what happens in hockey. The coach gets fired. But the amount of noise over the firing of an AHL coach, like, come on.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, you can look at Ottawa's record.
I know. Look, I know
NHL. I know what you're saying, but I mean, DJ Smith, I love the guy, great character, and he's done great things in the community. But his record with this roster would not mean, it doesn't show to be successful. I mean, so if we're talking about, by one game, right? I mean, we're talking about pennies on the dollar of what we were supposed to have. Now, I'm not calling for DJ Smith to be fired currently. I mean, I'm not the
because
GM,
they won four in a row, but.
No, that's not why. That's not why. That's not why at all. I think DJ Smith. I think DJ Smith. No. I think DJ Smith is not exactly
12:30 afternoon.
Yeah, no, I don't think DJ Smith is the right fit right now for this team. Even if they won 4 games in a row, those are against 2 teams. 2 of those games were against the Canadians. They're not exactly an all-star team. But going back to Troy Mann, I mean, the bigger shock was there hasn't been an AHL coach fired mid-season. There's been 2 since 2011. So, yeah, I guess you're right. It's an AHL coach, but it's definitely out of the norm for the AHL to begin with. It hasn't happened many times since 2011. That's over a decade, right? So that's why I'm asking, because this is something out of the blue. Troy Mann had positive records. They were in the playoffs for the first time last year in Belleville. And for an injured team in Belleville, they were doing relatively well. Some prospects were called up and doing well up here as well. So there's a lot of swirling things like you mentioned around the Troy Mann situation, and hopefully we'll get more clarity soon. I just wanted to ask...
I'm just not sure. I think to expect clarity, I don't think you're going to get any clarity. They moved on. If they weren't a 7-day break, this would have moved on. Dean Brown asked me this on the radio the other day. He said, how long do you think this Troy Mann situation will go on? I said, well, till Belleville gets its first win. I like I say, Trent Mann was called into a meeting by Pierre Dorion and Rick Bowness, Ryan Bowness, immediately after the firing. He was explained the situation. Was he happy about it? Probably not.
No, of course not, right? Yeah.
Right? It's his brother.
Mm-hmm.
But Trent Mann is a professional. Troy Mann is a professional.
Yep.
They both knew that when they got into this, that this was going to happen at some time or another. Yeah. It's like when Brian Murray got fired in Washington and replaced by his brother Terry Murray. Well, that risk was always there, right?
For sure.
Like at some point the head coach is going to get fired. I don't really. I think that your take on DJ Smith is, I mean, I know everybody likes to play the blame game around here, but I think DJ Smith has done a marvelous job with this team. I think him and his staff have gotten a lot out of this team. And I think when Pierre Dorion stood by him in November and said this wasn't a coaching issue, I think he was right. I think it was in a lot of ways. You have to look at their goaltending. They weren't getting they haven't gotten great goaltending all season.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree.
I don't believe they've played very well defensively.
Nope.
I think that has certainly come around in the last 2 months. And I think what the real wake-up call was at the end of November when they beat the hell out of the Anaheim Ducks 5-0 in what was essentially a basement bowl at that point. You know what, Brandon? I think that served as a wake-up call for this roster to go, you know what? We're way better than these guys, and we don't belong where we are.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, they had a bad November, and that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, I mean, I know that being a fan is part of being emotional, but I think this was the AHL coach who got fired.
Well, two things. Firstly, I'm a journalist student. I've graduated from Ottawa U. I'm a journalist, not just a fan. Two, before we move on to ownership, just want to mention that you're right. Goaltending has not been consistent. And I was a big fan of Talbot and Forsberg, still am, but they have not lived up to what they've been. And no team in the National Hockey League will be successful without goaltending. Defense hasn't been great. Hold on, I just want to mention this because the 5-on-5 play, which DJ Smith controls, has not been up to par. I mean, Ottawa in December got hot, right? And they started winning, but most of those goals came on the special teams, on the power play. So my issue is the 5-on-5 play is not up to par. They're scoring less goals than they should be if you look at the advanced analytics. So that's my concern. Once again, I love DJ Smith. He's a funny guy. But at the end of the day, we're 1 or 2 games above 500 with this roster, which should not be the case.
Where do you think they should be?
Well, at least in the conversation, not 8 or 6 points out, but 4 to 2 points out. They should be within 5 points of a playoff spot. Now, I'm not saying they need to be a playoff team. I understand there's some defensive issues.
6, so you're not happy?
Well, I mean, once again,
here's
the thing. Four of those points, we were 10 points 2 weeks ago, right? We were 10 points of a playoff spot.
5 points. They've made up 5
points. 4 of those points came against the Habs with half of a roster from the AHL. Yeah. So we'll move on now to ownership. My point is, going back to the AHL coach, it hasn't happened often when a firing happens midseason. And with the NHL coach, hey, if the team keeps on winning and they compete and push for a playoff spot or at least get close, then of course, I mean, the team was competitive. And of course, he shouldn't be fired, but there's still a lot of games left, like you said. So we'll see. Now let's get to Sens ownership.
But can I go back to one thing? Go ahead. You said that you're a journalism student, and I think that's a good thing. But I think one of the things you have to move into when you do cover sports on a full-time basis, Brendan, is that you can't be a fan. Like, no, I get that. There has to be separation. My friends always tell me, Brandon, I'm the worst guy to go to a hockey game with because I don't cheer for anybody. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan in any way, shape, or form.
No, for sure.
So I think sometimes it's easy to say, well, I'm a journalism student and I'm seeing this as a journalist. No, you're not. You're seeing it as a fan because you're riding the wave of emotions as a fan.
Well, yeah,
And
maybe in a game recap, but in an
and
interview,
I think
with
fans,
you, who is a journalist, right? I'm going to act like a journalist and ask you tough questions. That's what I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
So going back to Sens ownership, you've written some articles on Ryan Reynolds, which, of course, as a fan, and of course, as a city of Ottawa resident, would be huge, of course, not only for the team, but for the entire city. I mean, look what happened with Wrexham FC. I mean, they got some of the highest numbers in ESPN for soccer. So what are some updates on the Sens ownership and with Ryan Reynolds?
Well, I think what's happening right now is that the teams are in the process of the people interested are in the process of putting it together for their first bid. As I reported first, and I've been on top of this story basically since day one. I don't really think there's any outlet in the city that can really match my coverage of the sales story so far. I think you have to look at the situation, and I think the first round of bids are due mid-February. Is that February 15th? Is that Valentine's Day? I don't know.
14th is Valentine's Day. Yeah. So basically.
Okay. So I don't know when exactly that's going to be, but it's going to be sometime next week. And then I think what you're going to see is from there you'll basically separate the pretenders from the contenders.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the people that want to be in. Gary Bettman said last week, Brandon, that there's a good chance that the number will be pared down by there. Look, I still think that either Michael Andlauer or the Hamilton billionaire or the Kimmel family, Jeffrey Michael Kimmel, who sold their share in the Penguins, I still think they're the front runners. I think that if Bettman can find a way to marry those two, and what I mean by that is make them into one group.
Yeah,
I think that could happen, Brandon. But I would think by sometime around March 1st, early March, we will know who's going to be the owner of the Ottawa Senators.
Wow.
Because I think there will be and then you're talking. They have to get this done. They have to get this done because the clock's ticking on the NCC.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There's got to be a deal with the NCC by September. Yeah. September or October. Right? It's pretty. Yeah. I don't think that's a loose deadline.
No, and I think that's perfect. I was going to segue to that because you're absolutely right. There's two things happening here. It's not just, oh, look, the Sens are being sold to somebody. We're moving to downtown. We got to get that signed, at least like you said, in September or October. Just before we go back to LeBreton, any updates on Ryan Reynolds? Is he a part of a team, a consortium, as he likes to say? Any update on that?
Yeah,
did he find a sugar daddy by chance?
That's an interesting one because I'm of two minds on Ryan Reynolds now. Okay. Oh, and all of them say he should be involved. So let's start with that. Okay.
Of course.
Number one, he's either, in my opinion, Brandon.
Yeah.
And I don't know this. I think he's aligned himself with a group. Okay. I do. But part of me wonders if after watching the success that Wrexham had, and I think you'll probably be watching that today too. I wonder if he was able to find his, sugar mama or sugar daddy and put together his own group. And I have no evidence whatsoever to think that that's the case. But I do think he has settled with a group, either his own group or one of the groups that's involved. And Gary Bettman wants to be part of it, Brandon.
I bet.
You and I want him to be part of it. And I'm not a fan. But I just look at the success that he's had, Brandon. I think it's just been outstanding.
And I mean, as you know, you've been in the locker room. The talent, of course, is there, but the character in that locker room is unbelievable. And having, some content, extra content, whether it's an Amazon or Netflix show, I mean, just like they did with Wrexham with, Ryan Reynolds, I mean, it would be an absolute hit. And I think, it would just be great for the city. I mean, we're stuck between Montreal and Toronto. So having a Ryan Reynolds in your corner is stellar.
I like that too. More so Toronto, I think. I don't think we always look at Montreal as
No?
kind of I know what you're saying. I don't
You get
think
what I'm saying.
I don't think. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
But I Montreal's a big city, but I don't think we think about it like we think about Toronto. Like Toronto
Toronto
just
stuff.
gets in our craw, right?
Yeah.
So I think that it's interesting.
I think most importantly, and we'll move on to LeBreton Flats after this point, but since Ottawa is stuck, or since amalgamation with the local areas around the downtown core, you have a lot of Toronto fans that are like old time Toronto fans before the Senators were around that are still Leaf fans. So, like you said, Toronto, I mean, Ottawa is the team of Ontario. The Ottawa Senators are Ontario's team, in my opinion, but of course, that's just my opinion. In the vast opinion of many Ontarians, I like to think that they would say Toronto. So you're right, but once again, we're kind of like
Toronto,
the middle child.
No, but this is the Toronto is Canada's team.
I know you have, but I can't say it.
Oh my God!
If you couldn't tell, I do like the Sens a little bit.
I tell you what, like you don't even have to say their name; you just say Canada's team.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I mean,
they're as annoying as the Dallas Cowboys being America's team, right?
Perfect. That was an excellent comparison.
Oh my gosh.
My God. How about them Cowboys?
When I grew up though, the Dallas Cowboys was Roger Staubach and they were, and Tom Landry as a coach. I mean, they were America's team, right?
And they never won.
Now I never miss a Buffalo Bills game. But when I was a kid growing up, I never missed a Dallas Cowboys game because it was a total event, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And when I turn on my center ice package, Brandon, I tend to go to the Leafs because I just find them intriguing because, every win, they're either the greatest team in the world or, every loss, they're the worst team in the world. Ron Wilson had a great quote one time about the Toronto media. He said, you guys build up the statue and then you piss all over it, and it's true. Like 100%. one day they want to put up a statue of Austin Matthews. And then when they lose in the first round of the playoffs, maybe it's time to cut bait,
And on that point, as we segue to LeBreton Flats, the day they win a playoff series, I don't know how Twitter will handle that. It's going to be interesting. I don't know if we'll ever see it personally. It hasn't happened
this spring.
Whoa, we got a bit of a prediction. Okay, Bruce. Hey, I'll hold you to that. We'll see.
First, you got to get to the dance, they've got a long road to the dance.
All I'll say is
we'll get to that in a minute.
All I'll say is this: the first series in the modern time, or when I'm an adult, where Ottawa takes on the Toronto Maple Leafs, it's gonna be a classic. All I'm gonna say.
Well, and this is I was on a podcast with Jonas Siegel. He calls it the Press Row. We actually taped it 10 days ago, but he put it up last night.
Okay.
And that's one of the things we talked about is that the rivalry between the Senators and the Leafs has slipped because when's the last time? And I don't believe they've been in the playoffs together.
04, right?
Well.
Or 03?
But what year did Toronto blow it against Boston?
Which time? Time?
No, the first time.
I think that was like 2013.
Clark McCarthy was on the team.
Yeah, like Castle and stuff.
Yeah, I think that's the last time they were actually in the playoffs together. Because I remember, I think we were sitting in a hotel room, and I hadn't seen it the night before because we were on the road traveling. But I remember sitting in a hotel room, I think in Pittsburgh, and I'd have to look all this up. And they were and watching the replay of the meltdown,
Yeah.
But I guess my roundabout point and all that, Brandon, is they got to get back to that. Both sides got to get back to that.
100%. Because I mean, hockey is in our blood, right? And having that rivalry.
Toronto is there, so I guess Ottawa's got to get back to that.
Exactly. I mean, just look at what happened with Battle of Alberta the last couple of years, right? I mean, it's just great hockey. Speaking of hockey, though, like you mentioned earlier, Ottawa might be buyers. They also might be sellers. The next few weeks are going to be very much to see whether or not we're buyers or sellers. Let's say we're buyers. Who are we targeting right now?
Well, I still think they remain interested in Matt Dumba, the Minnesota Wild. I still think they'd like to get that elusive right shot defenseman, which I think the last time you had me on, we talked about them getting a right shot defenseman.
We're talking about
And I
Klingberg. You broke the story there.
yeah,
and
I think that, and I think maybe the time before that we talked about a right shot, like how, that elusive right shot defenseman.
Yeah.
But I don't think they mind going to get an unrestricted free agent and giving him a little bit of term.
Wow.
A 7-year deal, I don't know, Brandon. But
Good.
maybe 3 or 4, something like that. I do believe, as you and I speak today, that Pierre Dorion is sitting firmly on the fence on this one right now. I think he wants to be a buyer. I think, when they get back from this break and face the Edmonton Oilers on Saturday and then go from there. I think that if they have some success, he's quite willing to be a buyer. But the success, I don't know why I have so much trouble with that word. The success they had
happened often here lately. That's why.
I know, yeah. The success they had going into the playoffs, or pardon me, into the break, has to continue coming out of the break.
Mm-hmm.
And
makes sense.
For that to happen, they got a pretty good stretch of games there.
You're absolutely right. Out of those 32 games, like you mentioned, 21 of those teams were in the playoffs last year. So it won't be easy, but once again,
that's like you said, they beat Montreal coming in, right? And I get that.
They also beat Toronto though.
But those are games you have to win too.
Absolutely.
Right? Absolutely. You have to win the games you're expected to win.
Still an NHL team. Yep.
Yeah. And absolutely. So I get that, when you look at it with a critical eye, well, if they didn't win those games, it'd be Armageddon around here. You know what I mean?
Those 4 wins in a row are certainly nice, especially the Islanders and Toronto are, those are tough teams. Now with Bo Horvat for the Islanders, they're going to be pushing for a playoff spot, which makes Ottawa's chance a little tougher. But the point is, I said before, look, 2 of those 4 games, 4 out of those 8 points we got or whatever, or 10 points we got or whatever, were from non-playoff teams that were completely out of it. But I want to be, I want to play devil's advocate. I want to be on both sides. The other 2 games they played were against playoff teams. So there is some positive to take away from it. Now, what were you going to say? Sorry.
No, but the one thing that's interesting to me is that, and I think they've really, if you look at Anton Forsberg,
mm-hmm.
as soon as he took over from Cam Talbot, who's out with a groin injury, I believe, as soon as he took over, he kind of had the ball and he ran with it.
Yes.
And so that's a good thing, and he's just got to carry that into their next set of games. I guess they do have back-to-back. When do they have a back-to-back?
I think I can double check. I know they're playing the Oilers this Saturday.
It's the 13th, 14th, right? They have the back-to-back.
Correct. Flames and then the Islanders, yeah.
Or no, 13, 14, yeah. So
Flames and then the Islanders.
At some point, Matt Sogard is going to have to play if Talbot's not ready.
Absolutely.
Right? Now, will Talbot be ready for 14th against the Islanders? I think that possibility exists, but we'll have to see how he is coming out of the break.
Now, you mentioned it was a groin injury. Is that the same injury he was dealing with earlier this year?
No. Well, no.
Another one. Oh, shit.
No, that was when he caught the...
on the I know, but didn't he have some lower body injuries before? Minor ones?
I don't remember that.
He missed a couple of games, no? Well, okay, regardless, it's just it's bad to hear that. It's really tough to hear that it's another injury for the guy. He had a fantastic year last year with Minnesota. He had a really good opportunity this year to...
No, Forsberg missed a couple of games.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it was Forsberg.
Yeah, I think that was because I was thinking about that. That was around American Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
they had to bring in... they had to bring in someone to dress as the backup there.
Halbert. Yeah, you're right. Yes. Yeah, I remember Halbert. Miss Hellberg, great guy he is. But keeping on Cam Talbot, we've seen reports that the Pittsburgh Penguins and Los Angeles Kings are interested in the goaltender. Now, you mentioned yourself, Ottawa for quite some time has been looking for that right-handed defenseman. Now, the Pittsburgh Penguins have a couple of guys I can think of, but the LA Kings, now they have some guys, Matt Waugh, Sean Dursey, there's some Sean Walker even. There's some players there that Ottawa can acquire, especially with like a Brent Clark in the prospect wings there in LA. So is that a possibility? Is Cam Talbot possibly going to be traded within the next month?
If he is, someone would have to call. Nobody's called.
Really? You haven't heard anything?
No, nobody's called them regarding Cam Talbot.
So
I've seen those same reports. I don't put anything in them.
Okay.
Because I don't believe that anybody is called.
So do you think Ottawa potentially sees Cam Talbot as a goaltender for the next couple of years until?
Well, I did report that they've held talks with him, and I think both sides agreed to put those talks on hold, Brandon, until kind of later.
Yeah.
And I know it's getting later real fast here, right? Because March 3rd is approaching.
Yeah.
So I would guess, and don't hold me to these dates, I'm just sitting here going off the top of my head. My guess would be if he's able to get back from injury, play a few games, both sides will revisit it. I think the Senators would like to keep him, and I do believe that Cam Talbot would like to stay. But, the Senators want him to fit into what they want to do. As far as salary goes, and I can tell you that nobody's called.
Interesting. All right, well, we'll keep our eyes out on that, and next time we speak to you, hopefully we'll have some more clarity. And on that note, I mean, before I talk about the prospects real quick, because I know you have a meeting soon, so we'll let you go soon. I just have two more things. Firstly, there's other players, Hamonic, Holden. There's other players that are UFAs, Watson even. Who's gonna be shipped out? Who's gonna stay? What have you heard around those kind of depth players?
Well, I think what you have to look at is, even if they're sellers, and I've said this to a lot of people, Brandon, what do they have to sell?
Yeah.
I mean, our team's going to look.
Right.
Tyler Mott, to me, is the most attractive option because he's an elite penalty killer.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you're going to trade Tyler Mott, you're just going to have to replace him. So why not keep him?
Agreed.
See if he can sign another 1-year deal. Travis Hamonic, I don't know. I think you have to look at the mentor role that he's played for Jake Sanderson, and I think he's been really good, right?
Yeah.
Look, I mean, he makes mistakes.
Rookie, right? It happens.
No, I'm talking about Hamonic. I mean, Hamonic makes mistakes, yeah. The other guys, I don't know. I don't. Even if they sell, I don't really see a situation where it's a major sell-off. I don't see guys being sold off. I think that, maybe they wait till the end of the year on some guys.
What about Zaitsev? He's been playing much better since.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, to me, it's interesting, Brandon, because he's played well, and could you find someone to take that final year of the contract? I don't know. I don't know where. I don't know where that one kind of stands. That one I'll look to closer. I think it would be hard to move $4.5 million at the deadline.
Yeah,
I think that's got to be a summer deal. Look, Brandon, I like you. I'm as shocked as anybody that he started the year here.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But I think, there's always a lightning rod for criticism, and he's been the lightning rod, and I get that. But I think he's been just fine. I think he's been fine. Artem Zub will be back. Artem Zub will be back on
within the week, right?
Yeah. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, with Nikita Zaitsev, I mean, I absolutely agree with you. I'm surprised he wasn't dealt in the summer. And he's definitely looked better, but it's kind of like the Cody Ceci effect for me. I mean, if you put him in a role where he's more suited for, he's going to play much better. when he's in the top 2 pairing, he's on the first pairing playing against some of the toughest competition hockey has to offer. Of course, he's not going to be able to live up to that sort of standard, right? I mean, if you put him on the second, or what he's been playing on the third pairing for the most part since being called back up, he's looked much better. And of course, with Shabbat's phenomenal. He's looked a little better. So overall, I mean, I'm not saying Zaitsev's an all-star, but he certainly noticeably has looked better since getting called up. I think it was a wake-up call for him. Now, speaking of Belleville, before I let you go, a couple of things. JBD, Lassi, Thomson, these guys were first-round picks in 2018, 2019, invested a lot of draft capital into these guys. How does the organization view them? They keep on looking for right-handed defensemen.
Yeah.
They're both right guys. So how does the organization view them now and moving forward?
It's interesting on Thomson because it feels to me like he's kind of fallen off the map a bit, right? And that, when I talk about development, I think that certainly JBD has moved ahead of him on the depth chart. I think that Thomson has had kind of an up and down season. I still think, hey, Brandon, I still think that they believe that both of those guys will play for this team at some point on a full-time basis, and they'll both be very capable defensemen for this team. But, your guess is as good as mine as to when that might happen.
And it's shocking to me because Lassi Thomson, before the injury this
I know he's got a great shot.
Great shot, great pass too. Remember that pass to Tyler Ennis, the spinorama top shot.
And don't forget, as we sit here today, they're 6 points out of a playoff spot. I think that if they fall out of this race, then maybe guys like Thomson and Sokolov and JBD, then it becomes thinking about next year and letting those guys have a bit of a run up here. And I think we could see that happen too.
I want to squeeze this last question in because I know you have to go. Josh Norris, shoulder injury, shoulder surgery. Should he be ready to go by camp? Any update on that?
He should be, yeah. I think he had shoulder surgery last week. It's a 4 to 6 month recovery. One of the things that people need to understand about that injury, because a lot of they rushed him back. I think what happened there, Brandon, is I think what happened is the player doesn't want to have surgery. You look for every avenue that you don't have to get surgery. And when they he met with 5 doctors and 2 specialists. And that's 7 doctors. And I think that when the option of trying to rehab it, and Mike Johnson of TSN is a great guy to talk about this because he's had a lot of shoulder issues in his career, and so is Derek Brassard. But you want to avoid surgery, and when they say, look, if you can get the rehab, they told him they needed 12 weeks of rehab to strengthen the shoulder. He waited the 12 weeks. The date he returned was the date he always had in his mind, right?
Yeah.
And I think that even Pierre Dorion would tell you the possibility of shoulder surgery was never ruled out.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened. But we'll see what happens down the stretch here.
I think. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
And let's just, just to circle back on the coach and what happened in Belleville. I think that, when the organization feels it's time for a change, then they're going to make the change. And one thing I did appreciate about that coaching change in Belleville is you weren't at the point that Bruce Boudreau was at, right? One thing that Ryan Bowness said in his post thing was, when you make a decision, there's no point sitting on that decision.
Well, I'll give credit to Ryan Bowness. I watched that brief presser.
I had a good
on Twitter. It was very, very well done, very professional.
Yeah, and I had a good chat with him afterwards.
No
he told me that they told Trent afterwards, because Trent, it wasn't in a parking lot. They had a meeting with Trent, and they made him understand the situation. Did he like it? No, he didn't like it. It's his brother.
Of course.
Did he understand it? Probably not at the time.
What's that relationship like now? Are things okay?
Well, he's over scouting in Europe, so I mean, he didn't
Yeah.
slam down his he didn't slam down his
Resignation letter.
resignation, right? Like, and he's a professional. He's going to do his job. He's going to continue to do his job, and I just think that it's an awkward situation because he's an AGM and he should be consulted on the AHL coach, but he would have had to recuse him.
No, we got you.
Yeah, he would have had to recuse himself from that decision anyway. So.
No, it makes sense. I mean, regardless of where it happened, I mean, a decision like that, I mean, the brother, of course, Trent Mann has to be aware of it. But I could see both sides of that situation where, like, maybe he should be involved, maybe he shouldn't be. I get it. When family's involved, there's really no right answer as long as
exactly.
Right? There's no answer. It's.
But I love the one thing I love about you is your emotion and your passion.
Appreciate it.
But you'll hate going to a game with me if we ever sit together.
Well, you know what? I'll be there I'll be there February 18th. I'll be in the press box February 18th.
Oh, good. I'll look forward to seeing you.
Yeah, so we'll see how it goes. I'll try to keep my emotions in check.
Just don't slam the counter.
Dang. Yeah. No, I'll wear my suit. I'll look all professional.
Oh,
you won't be hearing.
Yeah.
We'll have to take a picture or whatever. But Bruce, always a pleasure having you on.
I really enjoyed our back and forth. I like you challenging me. I like that. I love it.
Of course. I got respect for you, Bruce. I'm not going to just sit here and take it. I'm going to go back and forth.
I was lecturing you. I'm not lecturing you. We're just having fun. All good.
Who wants to listen?
Well, it's my job to ask you tough questions.
Who wants to listen to a podcast where the interviewee has to say? That's boring. Let's make it right?
Great to talk to you, and thanks for accommodating me this morning, Brandon.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Where can everyone read your stuff and follow you?
Be here, OttawaSun.com, OttawaCitizen.com, and of course, Sun Garrioch on Twitter.
Bruce, pleasure. I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Take care. Good luck. Talk soon.
Thank you, Brandon.